Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Small. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Carrie Young in for Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Simón Rios, WBUR reporter. How's it going?
Good, Carrie. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here because you have a really interesting story, Simón, about how some landlords, advocates say a rising number actually, are charging application fees to prospective renters. And that's notable because it's actually illegal for landlords to charge application fees in Massachusetts. So I want to start out simply and ask, what is an application fee?
Yeah, so in Massachusetts, there are 4 fees that landlords, we have to be specific that we're talking about landlords here and not brokers or real estate agents. Landlords can charge first, last, security deposit, and a lock changing fee. That's what the law allows them to charge a prospective tenant. But more and more, we're seeing these quote unquote application fees, which can range anywhere from $20, $25 to $50 or more per adult. And it gets into a lot of murky territory because many people have no idea what they're paying for. Oftentimes, they're not even hearing back from the people who are charging these fees. And it's increasingly becoming the norm in many cases just to see an apartment.
Now, if I'm understanding it right, it sounds like the application fees are something you pay in the beginning while you're searching, or can it vary?
It varies. So I think like in the most extreme case, like you pay a fee and then you never hear back from the person. And then on the other end is like you might be the preferred applicant to rent an apartment and the landlord says, look, I have to run your credit check and I have to pay a fee to get your background, so I'm going to charge you in advance of giving you the apartment.
Okay, so these fees are illegal for landlords to charge, but it's happening. And it sounds like in some cases, even if you do pay it, you still might not end up getting the apartment you're going for, right?
That's the thing. The reality is that people are paying this fee multiple times. Like I talked to one renter in New Bedford who was saying that she had to pay 4 times, totaling like $350 or $400. And she finally landed an apartment after 11 months of searching. And the apartment that she got did not come with an application fee. So what does that tell you?
I mean, how common are these application fees in Massachusetts? Do you have an idea of that? And I guess what's behind the increase that advocates say they're seeing?
Yeah, so we don't have local data to know how common these application fees are, but according to a national survey, almost 9 in 10 renters are seeing application fees. And it's largely because of the tight housing market. So as we know from a Boston Foundation study that came out earlier this month, vacancy rates in Massachusetts are the lowest of the 10 largest metro areas. So like lower than New York, lower than LA. And that means that we have an incredibly tight rental market, meaning rent prices go up. It's harder and harder to find an apartment. And apparently that environment is leading to more and more of these application fees.
Oh, yes. Yeah, a lot of competition out there. So have you talked to renters in this case or prospective renters? What does this mean for them? Like, is this a lot of money for people? Does it depend on your income?
I think so. I mean, the way I see it, like for middle class folks, who have to pay $50 per adult to rent an apartment, like at the end of the process, even if it is illegal for a landlord to charge this fee, like it's not the end of the world when you're already paying, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in first, last security. But the people that we were talking to for this story are people who receive Section 8 housing vouchers, so very low-income individuals, in several cases earning less than $1,000 a month, and then having to pay these fees multiple times, 4, 5, 6, 7, even a dozen times. That really adds up. Andrea Park is a housing attorney with the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute. Let's listen to how she breaks this down.
People who have limited income, people who are on subsidized housing, people who have vouchers. This is a very real barrier for people because you may have a voucher that's going to cover all of your rent, but if you can't come up with what sounds like a pretty low application fee, you multiply that by the 10, 20 apartments you need to apply for. That becomes an actual barrier to finding a place to live.
So I think like so many things, Carrie, this whole phenomenon around application fees has a disparate impact on low-income folks.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back with WBUR reporter Simón Rios. Okay, so just to clarify, while these application fees charged by landlords are technically illegal in Massachusetts, some of those other fees that you might see in renting are indeed legal, and brokers can charge an application fee. It's just landlords that can't, right?
Right. So broadly speaking, brokers can charge application fees and landlords cannot. There is some gray area depending on who the broker is working for, because if the broker is working for the landlord, it appears that those fees would also not be legitimate.
And just real quick here, what is the difference between a landlord and a broker?
Yeah, so in Massachusetts and beyond, a real estate agent has to work for a brokerage. And oftentimes landlords will hire brokerages to rent their apartments. And then oftentimes the landlords will rent out their apartments on their own. And that's where you get into the trouble around application fees.
Right. Well, speaking of that, why is it that brokers and landlords are treated differently when it comes to charging these application fees?
Yeah, so if you ask the landlords, they'll tell you that it's because the brokers have a much older and stronger lobby and have more laws that have been written over the years sort of in their favor. So, and as you can imagine, that's often very confusing. Like, does the typical renter even know whether they're dealing with the landlord or the broker? So some people say on the tenant advocacy side that application fees should be illegal no matter who's charging them. For this story, I spoke with Doug Quattrocchi of the group Mass Landlords. He's saying, most people agree the law is very unclear in terms of who, why, and when different fees can be charged. But he says just his advice to landlords is to play it safe. Don't charge the fees at all. Let's listen to a clip.
We advise all our members, because we know we're in the spotlight as landlords and as mass landlords especially, we say to people, there's a lot of free stuff you can look at first. Like you can verify a pay stub, you can verify a landlord reference. Do the free stuff first, and then only charge for a credit report and a criminal background check if it looks like, based on what the renter said, they're going to pass.
He also says that the practice is becoming more and more widespread. And One, as we pointed out earlier, is because of the tight housing market, but also because there's little to no enforcement of the prohibition on landlords charging application fees.
So if you're a renter hoping to get a place in the near future, you're hit with one of these application fees. What are your options? And even if you do have options, are they feasible?
Yeah, I mean, your options aren't many. One thing you can do is hire a lawyer and try and file a complaint with the Attorney General's office. You could also try and negotiate the fees. Although, again, when it's a seller's market, for landlords, you're probably not going to have a lot of success when you're trying to close the deal. Let's listen to what one of the tenant advocates has to say about this. This is Andrea Park again from the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute.
People routinely will tell us that everyone's charging an application fee. What do I do? Isn't this illegal? And very often the practical advice we have to give them is, yes, it is illegal, but, realistically, if you want that apartment, you might need to pay it, and then you could try to sue them later, because the market is so competitive that there's a very real fear that if they don't pay that fee, they're not going to get the apartment.
I mean, with this being such a growing issue for renters, and even, the murkiness of the law is frustrating for landlords. So is there any word or hint that something might be done about this on Beacon Hill? Is any change coming our way to help this?
Yeah, there is some legislation that didn't go anywhere in this previous session that would address some of the issues we're talking about. There's also action at the federal level. The Biden administration has been looking at what are called junk fees more broadly across the economy. So like when we think of buying a concert ticket and then having a convenience fee and a this fee and a that fee. And it's turned out that these junk fees are becoming more and more common in the housing market. So there are some changes proposed at the Federal Trade Commission. But keep in mind, this issue is one of so many that advocates in the housing world are dealing with.
Well, this was such an interesting story. Thank you for staying on top of it. And thanks for talking with us about it, Simón.
All right, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
That was WBUR reporter Simón Rios. And that's our show for today. Thanks so much for listening to The Common. Have you been hit with an application fee from a landlord? Tell us about it. You can hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or you can email us at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Carrie Young. Daryl C. Murphy will be back with you all tomorrow.